Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. On behalf of myself, I'm Scott Barris and my co-host, Eva Thomas, and our amazing team from the Grey Swan Guild. We welcome you to the first quadrennial Leap Day of the Swan. Today, as a group, we'll explore a very current topic of work from home or anywhere, as someone pointed out to me this week, which is accelerated out of necessity by our situation 4 years ago today. Anybody who, all of us know where we were 4 years ago today for the most part. And so we also know that change is happening and very quickly. So let's sit back and get ready to review today, leap into tomorrow, while today aligns tomorrow into almost true celestial time. Okay, let's dig into some fun facts about Leap Day. All right, so February 29th, of course, is Leap Day. Happens once every 4 years. We use this to align the rotation of the planets and the sun to our calendar. That way, our seasons actually don't shift over decades or millenniums. Leap Day was first introduced by Julius Caesar in 45 BCE. People born on Leap Day are leaplings or leap year babies. Leap Day is also celebrated as a rare disease day to raise awareness about the impact that are the disease impacts that are on people's lives. In many traditions, Leap Day is considered an unlucky day for making big decisions or getting married, and it was more in the past. A few hundred years ago, it was definitely considered, even if you were born on Leap Day, you were considered unlucky, which I find fascinating. In some cultures, on Leap Day, this actually started in Ireland. Women were allowed to propose to men. Obviously, it would be the norm for a man to propose to a woman. And they continued this tradition, and it was picked up in other places in Europe, including England, but England twisted it even more. If the When the woman proposed and the man refused, then he had to buy her 12 pairs of gloves to hide her lack of ring for well over a year. The chances of being born on a leap day are about 1 in 1,500. And the leapling population is right around 5 million on any given generation. The tradition of having a leap year was not recognized in many countries until the 20th century. And the next leap day and the next time we will meet will be on February 29th of 2028. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Rob, and he's going to explain our bingo fun.
Thanks, Scott. I love the idea of Leap Day because it happens every 4 years. And that kind of cycle is kind of human. It's our nature. There's lots of things going on. Olympics every 4 years, FIFA World Cup every 4 years. But anyway, in order to track along this session, we invented Leap Day Bingo. So this is for you guys to track along. And it's basically a bingo game. It's interactive. This link will work. I just put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat again. And so the idea is that as we say these words, you can follow along and put it on the screen if you want, put it on your mobile, it works. And what we're going to do is for the three people who complete one of the rows or the diagonal, we will award a copy of our uncertainty book that we published last year. It's a large book about uncertainty, and we'll just play along. So this is just a fun game, so we can track along and pay attention to things that are here. And if you see a graphic, those are free squares, so they're pretty lucky you get this done. So there's a way to send this to us you can call it bingo anytime you want. But once you click on the prize, you'll see a bingo card that's generated for you. And then as you follow along and you hear someone say the Olympics, like I just did, or working from home, you mark off that square. Once you fill up the card on one of the rows, you send it back to us. You can send a screenshot to Sean. He loves screenshots, but that's the bingo game. It helps you pay attention to what we're doing. It'll run on mobile. It'll run on your desktop. If you want to print it and follow along that way, that's up to you. That's bingo, Scott. Bingo for Leap Day.
Outstanding.
And
Thank
I'm
you,
just
Rob.
going to put that in the chat right now. Oh, Sean did it already for me. Thank you, Sean. So just click on that. It'll generate a card for you. And you can play along. And to send it, there's down in the bottom right-hand corner for you, there's a little menu bar. And that'll have the directions on how to email it back automatically to us. Or you could just pop your link right in the chat. That's it. That's all, Scott.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. All right, now it's time to dig into our pre-read. For those of you who were invited, we also invited you to read what we're calling a pre-read. This dates back to our initial clubhouse days for the Grey Swan Guild back in 2020. We were much more virtual than we are today, but we were using Clubhouse as our way to communicate. So we would write a rap, which would include good, bad, ugly points about any given subject or even a myriad of subjects. This was something that I really enjoyed with my Sunday coffee. And then so I decided to go ahead and reintroduce a form of this in a pre-read for this event. So with that, we're going to discuss the pre-read, and the pre-read, I'll have the guys put it up in the chat. All the articles are summarized. They were summarized using AI, by the way. And so that way you can try and follow along if you didn't have a chance to dig into the pre-read. But I just have a few ground rules that I'd like to set that it kind of makes it, it's going to make it a lot easier because we only have 10 minutes per category and we have quite a few people. Not everybody might have a chance to speak. So this is an interactive session, and we have limited time, obviously, for the answers, as I'd mentioned before. So what we would like for you to do is obviously stay on mute, raise your hand. Once you're acknowledged, unmute, state your point. I'd like to do within a minute, and maybe we'll actually have enough time. So we have 52 participants, so we actually might have enough time for everybody to throw out an idea. Please respect others, obviously. We're looking to gather thoughts that can create ideas for others and prime ourselves whenever we get into the breakout session for the futures wheel. Obviously, those that choose not to speak are more than welcome to use the chat. And like Rob had mentioned, we are monitoring the chat, and we will be compiling all of that and trying to respond as best we can. So with that, we're a little early, but that just gives us a little bit extra time. Let's dig into the pre-read.
So maybe I add something here. So I was introduced shortly in the beginning. My name is Eva Thomas. I'm co-hosting this part with my colleague Scott Fairs. I'm super excited to be here with such a big interested group because I believe strongly that futures thinking is something best done in collective, because the more perspectives we get into our discussions, the more fruitful the discussion will be and the more sense-making the outcome is going to be. So don't be shy, just interact with us. There is no right or wrong here. There is just a different set of perspectives. And when I heard the topic first, I have to admit, Scott, that I was a little bit, yeah, okay, we are all working from home. But then when I started to read the pre-read, and don't worry if you didn't, because what I love about this topic is we all have an opinion on this, because we all have either or experience with the topic of remote work, work from home, or maybe it is even we don't work from home, but we would like to work from home, or we only work from home and we would like to go someplace to work. So this is going to be an interesting one. And Scott prepared the basis for this discussion so nicely. So we put it in 4 sections. So the first one we are going to hit is the hybrid work trends and the future of work culture. Hit it off, Scott.
Excellent, thank you, Eva, and yeah. Okay, so we were like Eva mentioned, I went ahead and categorized them. and this would allow us to do the futures wheels and have these subjects. We would have multiple subjects that would interest people that maybe that they're more passionate about, economics, right? The economic impact versus, let's say, what are the worker hybrid trends of the future? So I'll start the conversation off with a question. I'll give credit to one of my peers for helping me out with some of these questions. But so we see that employees are resistant to the old model of working in the office 5 days, and then to the point to where they'll change jobs if that they'll literally quit and change jobs. At was a fascinating, I think it was a 76% take rate. If a company goes from remote or hybrid to full 5 days a week in the office. Very fascinating statistic. So with that, saying that, we now have Gen Z and Gen Alpha who are going to be dominating the workforce in a matter of years. So my question would be, what do we really, how do we really plan for this? Because we're getting resistance, and we also have a workforce that, due to COVID, understands remote either through school or college or work. And I'll leave it at that, and we'll open the floor for conversation.
Scott, I've been working from home for 40 years. I wrote a Medium post about this alongside, I'll post it later. But I think that the change is huge. We never not stop talking about this these days. It's in the news, it's in our lives. So it's on top of my mind.
I raised my hand, so is it okay if I make a comment?
Course,
Hi,
Mohan.
Mohan Pucha from Chicago. As we've thought about this across our firm and spoken to a lot of leaders across the globe, including leaders in real estate who are most impacted by work from home, right? There is a generational divide. So people in my age group, right, approaching senior citizenship status, we love hybrid work, right? I don't really need to commute an hour every day. I really know my job well. My networks are well established. I'm well deep-rooted within my organization. I don't need as much mentorship or allyship, which comes from physical contact, as others do, right? But then when you go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and it was counterintuitive. So all these kids coming out of college that went through the COVID pandemic remote, hate remote. They hate it because they don't have friends in their small apartments or their far-flung communities in which they're living in. They have small apartments. They usually socialize with people that they meet at work. And so they're feeling lost and abandoned, even though you would think that they're accustomed to Zoom through high school and college. What we're finding is they don't like it. I don't have answers. I'm just saying that this is some observations we've had.
Thank you. That's exactly what we're looking for. I myself, I was remote, starting in at least 2017. I mean, I was remote either maybe even earlier, 2 to 3 days a week. So I already had a hybrid position. And I was actually transitioning into, didn't have a term for it, but digital nomad in 2018 and 2019. So when COVID hit myself, I became a digital nomad, and I still am today. So any other comments? Any other, well, we have more.
Isabel, please.
Isabel, thank you. Oh, you're on mute, Isabel.
You're on mute. Please unmute.
Sorry, I thought I clicked unmute, but classic Zoom. Yeah, on the young people thing, I think that's really interesting. In the UK, I don't know if it's different in different parts of the world, but it's not because they want to make friends at work at all, but it's also because young people just flat share with a lot of other people. They don't have a space to work. And they need to learn from people who are more senior than them. So it's not really, like, in my experience, it's not that they really want to be in an office or 5 days a week. They'd rather not. But being with your 5 flatmates, trying to work in a kitchen or being on video calls, is obviously very unworkable. So that has to move to, it's starting to move to different spaces where people can work remotely from different types of settings as well. But yeah, that was my contribution.
Yeah, Isabella, I totally agree with that. I think it's really, I think it'll be interesting to see if there's a shift as we have more work from home. Will we see more co-working spaces, right? Will we see different places to work? Sylvia, another one of our co-hosts, put in her chat the other day an article about the future of libraries and coffee shops, right? And will those become the new co-working spaces? Some interesting things to think about. Thanks for bringing that forward.
Yes, thanks, Isabel and Stephanie. I just wanted to add short, we have a lot of raised hands, so I don't want to keep too much of the space, but I've seen an interesting business model of a coffee shop renting. So you get the coffee for free, you get the cake for free, but you pay per hour like it would be an office space, and they even provide printers and stuff. And I think it will be also an interesting take in the business models of those places, how they are dealing with that shift. So Wendy, you were next, please.
So work from home for me often relates to the types of people that I'm spending time with, you know, in terms of projects. So I'm in Australia, and if I didn't work from home, I wouldn't be having any of these conversations. It's just not supported by any place that I would choose to work content-wise. The overlap just isn't there. But for the young people in our house, and we have international students in our house, they have a huge degree of isolation. So they do have a room that they can work from. They all have decent enough spaces and internet. Some of them never come out even though they're in a place where they have the space, they don't come out and share and have conversations. And many of them, because they don't have any place to congregate outside of our house either, they don't have a place to get their legs on in terms of how to interact as humans. If they've got an extended network, which many of them have not had because they don't culturally do that, they miss out just about every level. So the only time that they actually have human interaction and start growing into being in a different culture, and I'm in Australia, so there's lots of learning there, and also to learn work cultures, is if we take them out of our household and put them into some other community that isn't work. So there's quite a few factors there. Some of them is the culture they come into a country with, a job with, their ability to break out of their old culture and get into a new one, and then their willingness to learn people from other people who have connections that will help them get jobs. So there's a lot going on there that isn't just the nature of, have you got the job that gives you a social connection. There's a lot of containers.
Thank you so much for this perspective. I'm looking forward to the discussions in the breakout room sessions we're going to have later on. So for people who just joined recently, we are now in the deep dive discussion on our core topic, work from home. We are in the section of work culture changes. We have a lot of raised hands. I hope I can address everyone. So it's going Bogdan and then Ron. Please, Bogdan, what is your perspective?
So my perspective might be a little bit different, and this is not my personal. I'm speaking from a leader having a team. So if I look at my team age, it's between 27, 35 years old. Majority welcome the work from home, and that's because this is the age where parenting starts kicking in. So they really welcome that opportunity to work from home. And then for a few folks that are younger than 27, they, because of the cost of metro living, they were pushed out of the core metro, where offices are usually, especially in Canada, you know, are. Yeah. So they welcome again the remote part because of that. They moved out, and it takes an hour, 2 hours. I read an interesting article about the hybrid model works better in metro spaces where commuting is actually supported and works well. If you need to commute 2 hours on the way there and back, it's not working. So I see a mixed reaction of this. In my world, the 2-day hybrid works perfect because that gives the young folks and my team the ability to communicate. And on purpose, I try to cast those 2 days with more team events, meetings, rather than just sitting in front of Zoom and talking outside. You can do that at work. So it's a mixed reaction. It really depends on the employee and their needs. That's kind of
yeah, definitely. So I'm looking forward to your contribution when we move on to the CEO perspective, to the leadership perspective on work from home. Ron, please. Ron Basir, and then it's Anna.
Awesome, thank you. So there's a couple of interesting threads I just want to sort of bubble up here, right? I've been working remotely personally since 2007. I'm glad COVID came along. This is a silver lining for me. Got everyone else up to speed on this. But the interesting, there are a number of interesting things here, right? Vivek Murthy's book Together talks about the loneliness epidemic and the lack of engagement and interaction. And this is just another driver of something like that. So I don't think that that's going to persist in perpetuity. I think that we are going to figure out how to drive connections with each other in a meaningful and substantial and significant way, not in the social media, let's only present the idealized view of our lives and unwittingly make other people feel less than and or worse about their current lot. I think we're going to figure out a way to do that in a genuine way. And then that's going to trickle back into the work from home space, the virtual and or remote worker space, where whatever technologies, whatever techniques, whatever tactics we adopt in our personal lives to build those connections, we'll be able to do in a professional way. The other interesting thought about this is Daniel Pink's book Drive, where he talks about fulfillment being derived from being able to work where you want, when you want, with whom you want, on what you want. And I think the work from home is driven by a lot of those things because it represents that freedom. But that's not just a work from home. That's a new model of working. That's coalescing project-based teams to tackle a project and then dispersing them and reassembling them in a different way. So it's not just where we're working from. We talk about we're working in a different model. We're not yet, but I think that we're headed there. Right now we're doing we work remotely, but all we're doing is leveraging technology to work as though we were in an office, yes. but remotely, right? We're not yes. adopting technology that says, okay, we're going to change the way that we work. Motorola went through an interesting evolution. I spent some time there. They were downtown in Chicago. They built a massive office out in Schaumburg. Everybody was feeling great about not having to buy downtown, not having to live downtown, not having to pay to be in that space. They all moved out to Schaumburg. And what Motorola realized is that all the young, innovative, upcoming people in the marketplace were still in the city. So they reinstituted we're back in the downtown Chicago, and everybody was commuting in from Schaumburg. We can put offices out in suburbia.
That's a great thought. Keep that when we enter the economic and financial impacts, because this is exactly hitting into the real estate issue that is coming with work from home.
I just wanted to bubble up a couple of those ideas.
Yeah,
that's great. And I'm really looking forward to the breakout sessions where these discussions are easier to take in smaller groups. I encourage everybody who has raised his hand or their hand now, please also throw your question into or your statement into the chat, because it's not so easy to facilitate everybody in the big room. So Basir and Anna, or Scott, do you want to move to the next topic already?
Yeah, either if I may, and my apologies, like I said, we have limited time. So I want to move on to the next topic, but any thoughts that you have, please put them in the chat. They're extremely important for the entire event. And also the post work that we're going to be doing once we're done. I just wanted to reset the room a little bit, just so that everybody understands is the thought processes that we're basically trying to get our gears flowing with. What do you think work from home culture will look like in 4 years from now? But it's also okay to, still dive into, what's your current experience and where you are, because that really is a good tell as to, what we will be seeing in the future. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for everybody. CEO perspectives. This was fun. I have to. I'm going to take a minute on this one because every time I came across an article, and I read a lot of articles over the last year about work from home, um, is how some of the CEOs reacted. They just they decided, okay, pandemic's over. Don't have to, I don't have to. I can have all my people back, and I want them back. Like the Elon Musks of this world. So here's my query to start everything, and I give my friend Howard big kudos for this one. But how can CEOs adapt to a new normal? They've lost some control about employees showing up. And if they really want to go back 5 days a week, they are at risk of losing 76% of their workforce in a very short amount of time. I'd say a year, maybe two, be my best guess. So what's more important? Identifying the most effective and efficient ways to work and to be accomplished, or mandating where it gets done. And we'll open the chat back up for with that thought.
Janet.
Janet.
So I just have one thing to say. In my opinion, with the rapid expansion, I'm going to say AI, for want of a better term, we can't even begin to think what things are going to look like in a year, let alone 4. And I think that's going to change a lot of people's mindsets just as we go through that whole adapting to the new technologies.
It's Bogdan, please.
I think on this topic, the conclusion, it's a bit more straightforward, because as a CEO, you're responsible for the business. So yes, people as well. And I'll give you an example. Here in Canada, banks pushed a lot, and they were spearheading the return to the office. Now, they did that because if you look at in downtown Toronto, where I am, businesses are suffering. There's no folks, there's no lunchtime crowd. So therefore, their commercial banking business is suffering. So by mandating 80,000 people, for example, to come back downtown core Toronto, you will indirectly inject energy into your commercial banking. So from that point of view, it's very straightforward, but there is always what do my employees do? And unfortunately, in this period of economic uncertainty, corporations are still having a strong control over, I think, the desire of employees to work remotely. So you don't want to come, you look for a new job, but look at what's outside. The uncertainty of finding a job you want, it's quite high. So I think CEOs have a smoother, my personal opinion, decision-making pattern here.
That's very interesting. I think I would be very interested in perspectives from other countries, because I'm a Central European, and I know that in my country, one of the CEO issues around is, and also the discussion in the media is also around control, and this issue that remote working is not as productive as office working, because I have my people like not in observation zone. So I would be interested in different cultural perspectives. So it's Peter and then Wendy.
Yeah, my son works for a company called Arctic Wolf out of Houston, Texas, and he lives in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. And the majority of their workforce works from home or other communities, including England as well. So it's the new norm for
yes,
many companies.
Yes, I agree. And there, thank you for this input. I think an interesting question that arises out of that is also for especially for the organizational perspective, how you gain the identification with the company you had in the past, because the people were going every day to the building where they seen the logo and where they drink out of the cup with the logo. How do you get a similar identification with the company or the brand when you have such a distributed team? So, Wendy, looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Yeah, from Australia here. So we have this mixture of very big distances across, and Canada has a lot of the similarities as well. So there is something here around how realistic is the company in terms of understanding how they can capture exactly the right talent and bring them in. So some teams can never, because of the distribution of the people, ever co-locate except for once or twice a year, which is important to do. And the rest of the time they work very well, because the distance is just the distance and where you live is where you live. But there's also something there also about the neurodiverse community. A lot of people, and this is to do with inclusive design and making sure that people's specific needs are met. I'm sitting in a very comfortable space for me. I've got exactly what I need around me to be productive. It's almost impossible for me to reproduce that or to have my need to reproduce that as present in the places that I work. And I do workplace design and I do it for CEOs, and I've done it in many different places. So the point there is I know what makes me productive. I can't reproduce that, and the company can't do that either. They can't get my lighting right, my schedule right. And if they want me to produce quickly and in a very short amount of time, something pretty magical, then please don't drag me into the office 4 hours there and back, or our days. You know, it can take me 2 days to get somewhere and back again. That's not going to help you, and it's not going to help me. So why are we playing this game?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Wendy. You know, and some of the reading alluded to that that companies are they're desperately trying to figure out what kind of office space to actually get people to come back in and work. So you definitely, I think you're in an interesting career position, you know, as far as that goes. So hopefully you'll be very challenged in the future. Eva, do we have anybody else?
Yes, it's Rob. Rob Tyree, please.
Yes.
In Ironstone Advisory, the company that I have, I advise CEOs in companies. I've got a portfolio of 8 firms that I work with. And I know that the CEOs get a lot of airtime on the newspapers, the front pages, guys like Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan. But on remote, when you're looking at the books and you're working with the CFO, you know remote is in your life. If you're in a major firm that's over 100 people, the CFO is looking at leasing that extra space and filling in 150 people into space
like
for
the
50.
notion of the bias, because I also think there's a bias towards bias. The bias are negative. There's also bias versus heuristics. Without heuristics, humans cannot.
Moderators. Thank you. Yeah. So when you look at the books and what a company saves, it's amazing. I'm doing some work with a major consultancy, World Brand, and they don't have the office space to bring people back to work. They tell people to come back to work, but they don't have it. This shift in capital movement across the last 4 years means that it's here to stay. Around the edges, I think that the philosophy of change, people will pick the target of remote work when they really want to do something else, like get their staff smaller. You're coming back to work. That's what I want you to do. But what I really want you to do is not work here anymore. That's it.
That's a good point. Goody, and then Julia.
Hi, folks. Goody Gibson from Toronto. I just finished a gig at a very large NGO, and a couple of interesting experiences from that, I'd just say. And particularly from the focus of the C-suite, which I was part of, right? The things we worried about mostly were control and culture. That's kind of what we were concerned about. And control really emanates just from a change in your ego, I think in terms of you're just not going to be able to go in the office and look over, you know, masses of people that work for you and get that sort of sense of or that boost of ego. And when you have a CEO who's very reliant on that, that's problematic for the organization. So that's something I think CEOs need to check perhaps at the door. The other thing we worry about culture, and one of the things we did was we ran a 3-day all-employee offsite at a hotel in Toronto. Had over 400 employees there. It was all employee organized, etc. But it was a real boost to the culture, and we saw right away in our tracking of employee engagement a tremendous spike to 93% employee engagement. So, and that was something we kind of parroted from watching Salesforce and what Benioff was up to in terms of, and he was running lots of events. He changed his real estate strategy to buy basically resorts where he could pull employees together for big cultural injection events. So that really worked well for us on the culture piece, and I think something that many organizations could embrace. And then I would say the other part of it is leadership. How do you cultivate leadership in an organization in a remote world? And as a C-suite, that's the other thing you worry about. And certainly your board worries about that. What's happening? What's the succession plans, etc. And that one we didn't solve yet in terms of really understanding how we could really cultivate individual leaders effectively in a remote setting. So
yeah,
that's it for me.
This I can thank you very much for this contribution. I can relate to that statement. I think personal growth and how organizations can foster personal growth for their employees when there is not an on-site setting is a very interesting question, which is coming up more every year. Julia, please. Let us into your thought bubble.
Hello, Julia Freeland out here in Seattle, Washington. I'm an executive coach that works with several CEOs. And what I find is that a lot of them are fine with the idea of remote work when it's independent work. But when it requires collaboration, design, any kind of deep, hairy, big, hairy problems that you're trying to solve. I mentioned this in the comments, but it's like the energy and the speed with which you can innovate together with people in the same room. It just can't be matched in a virtual setting. I do all my coaching virtually, and I do believe you can create intense connection with somebody virtually in just especially like a one-on-one setting. However, what Goody was saying and what you're mentioning about like the need to be intentional about creating space and time, like I think that's the shift. You have to actually create the space and time for people to connect and have fun. So I used to tell people all the time, like, I'm sorry, if we haven't shared a beer together, I'm not going to remember your name. And it's the gist of like, I need to have some fun with you. I need to connect and collaborate. I need to connect with you over something meaningful and human, as opposed to just over business. And I think what we're finding in this virtual setting is that people have buckets that get filled by those positive connections that happen when we're together. And when we're all just moving from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call, that bucket gets depleted and we have nothing to work off of. So when somebody says something that kind of pisses us off or like rubs us wrong, there's no connection or that deep trust that's built on the fun thing we just did because we did axe throwing together, for us to be able to pull from them, go like, hey, they're just having a bad day. There's no reserves. And so I think that's the part, like, and I loved what, the first person I was talking when I came in, but he's talking about how we have to be more intentional. Like we're using we're trying to use the same model for a different environment.
Yes.
And that's what I find when I'm working with people the most is it's this, we're not putting the right emphasis on where we should be focusing on how to adapt.
Yes.
Well,
I 100% agree with your statement, and we could talk hours about these issues. I see already a connection there, so maybe we can catch up sometime else. Kevin Wallace, Eid. I hope I said that correctly. Please. You're on mute.
Pretty good, yes, thank you. Pretty well pronounced. I think a couple of points, very interesting. Goody mentioned the word culture, and I have found over many years of liaising with large organizations that any change they want to make, if they can't change the culture, then that change is not going to work. And I think Julia backed that up very well as well. And there is an element, a great element of mindset in this. If people don't get into the right mindset, and there is a different mindset for being able to work in the new way that we're all finding, and there's tremendous benefits to be had from working in this new way. But if people try and apply the mindset that worked when everyone commuted to an office, then that is not going to work. We need to get people to start thinking in a different way in order to maximize the benefit. And there are huge benefits to working in this new way. I think the whole concept, frankly, of going to an office, dates back to the days when the fastest method of communication was a bloke on a horse, and things have moved on since then. So we have to change our culture and our mindset to accommodate those changes in technology and the benefits that technology brings to us as a result. If not, then it's not going to work.
Yes, but the interesting question here is, what is first, the chicken or the egg? So I think also the technology influences the culture and vice versa. I'm with you. You cannot, this classic sentence, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And my opinion is culture and strategy should have breakfast together. So you should put it in the same bucket. Scott, I think we have to move on to the next topic, but Goody, I would love to hold your thought, and we give Scott a moment to give his introduction, and then we get going.
Yeah, and a couple of last words on the CEO section. I don't remember the publication, a very well-known publication, and maybe Antonia can tell me. But there were CEO surveys we reviewed last year, 2 of them, one in Q2, and I think one in December. And there were a lot of fascinating things that CEOs were talking about, what was on their minds. And their workforce being hybrid, remote, or completely in the office was not on the list. So that was a really interesting tell. And then there was something else that that one of my peers on the Grey Swan Guild mentioned, that for the CEOs, when you guys are in there and you're in the C-suite, the one thing that doesn't exist are MBA programs that create or teach managers how to effectively manage remote employees. So we're running blind right now. And even so, that might be another challenge for CEOs in the future is, how do we train our middle managers to deal with this? All right. And with that, I'll be done. And let's move on to challenges and employee impacts. So I don't know how profound this is, but, some jobs can only be done on site today. While this may change over time, should our focus be on those jobs that do not have the obvious need for physical presence, or should we be thinking about the future and the migration of the next 2 generations, really, from, let's say, factory jobs where they have to show up every day to wanting to jobs that are hybrid or fully remote? And I'll be complete with that. We can open everything up for comments again, Eva.
Desir, you already raised your hand before. Now it's your turn.
So, when you think of medicine 50 years ago or 100 years ago, it would have been completely unimaginable and insane to have telemedicine. But thanks to the technology and sensors, obviously the computing power, things can be caught early on. So I guess we have to think in ways to innovate, but obviously keep the hindsight, both the tech and how people behave and habits. You know, when people have good habits, obviously that's going to reduce the risk. And same logic can be implemented into the workplace.
Thank you. Wendy, now I know already Australia speaking.
Okay, I do come from the bush capital. So the impacts on employees, apart from the fact that you win back part of your life, I think is that one of the things you can do is you can be much more enmeshed in your local community because you have more time. And the things that you can do then extend the reach of your own skill set and the materials you have to work with and your relationships with other people that can be richly brought back into the work. So if I have 2 to 4 hours extra a day, and I can just leap from here and go and meet someone, you know, 50 meters behind me on Mount Taylor, which is where I live. And I have walking meetings, business meetings under trees, gum trees, because I can. Everyone leaps out of their office and finds something local. I'm much fitter as a person, and I've got a lot wider range of materials to take into my thinking if I'm a creative person. There's no way that those ingredients could ever be in an office. It's not a possible thing. If you're in a creative job, you actually need those other influences to do your job. My point is that there's a challenge in that the communities are so then wide, then it might mean that your designs have to then cope with this collapse of possibilities, which can be a cultural problem. Just saying. Anyone who lives in a unit, I find it very hard to bond with you. I'm sorry. I don't live in a unit. I can go and find nature whenever I want. But it does create a width, which means you can get some, and Australians have been shown to do this, new thinking into a problem that other people have thought themselves into a box around. And that is important. So it's both a blessing and a curse. It's a curse in that you then have to bring the ideas together, which means some people feel that their bit of love is lost. But you then have novelty. And we've seen what happens with large language models when you have novelty that can't be compressed.
I just want to add the other side of the coin, because I have a family, so I have 3 children, and honestly, sometimes to have it all in one place is super challenging. And sometimes I wish back to the times where I went every day to the office, where I could leave my family be and know, okay, there is nothing I can do at this very moment now in this situation. And I know that friends who are my age, who are living in similar situations, what is challenging with the remote work or the work from home is that it's blurring lines between the professional life and the private life. And not everybody is mentally equipped to deal with that line, so with that blurring. So for the mental health, I find it is a challenge. Bogdan and Nurdan, I don't know if you support my comment, if you had a completely different comment, please, Bogdan first and then Nurdan.
Thanks, Eva. I'll mention 3 things in terms of impacts and challenges. One, I would say on a negative side, what I see, I mean, from the dawn of time, we humans learned by witnessing, thinking, reproducing, and then trying to improve something that we saw. So as a father, I'm looking at my children, you know, being now going up and learning. It's very hard until the learning model changes. And there's a whole Gen AI conversation here. Until that changes, we still need to witness, mimic, reproduce, and then we can get better. Rob and I worked for years together, and I know we, you know, witness, mimic, reproduce, and got better. So I think that's a negative impact, especially for the younger generation we're coming in. Experience is still something hard to remove. You have to go through the cycle. So I think that's one. The second one, what I've seen as a positive, though, a lot of, especially in my area, my team, because you work remote, the emphasis now is on results. You focus on results rather than participation. I've been in the office, therefore I'm successful. No, what are your results? And it was very clear that high performance folks are coming to the top. So I think that was a positive aspect. And also positive, what I've seen is the freedom of schedule. And I think Eva here, maybe we disagree or agree, I'm not sure, but I think the freedom of owning my own schedule as an employee allowed me to innovate where I can, because now I can think of, okay, where I need or don't need to be, but also on a private life. I mean, the last 4 years, you know, I have a 13-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. It was awesome because I was able to be part of key moments in the day, you know, go to school, come back to school, which I would have not been able to do in a traditional 5 days a week, 2 hours commuting model.
We agree and disagree at the same time, because I personally think what you describe needs a certain level of personal growth to handle it. And the question for me is how we equip, especially the next generation, with what they need to handle this kind of freedom. Because to handle freedom, you always need the skills to handle the freedom. So I personally would not want to work in an office, otherwise I would, you know what I mean? So I chose the way I'm working. It is not that I don't want to do that, but I see also its limitations, and I know a lot of folks who prefer to go to the office. So we are here in an online space where it seems the people are very accustomed to work in the office and prefer that remotely and prefer that option. But we should keep in mind who is not in the room and what it is saying about the topic itself. So Nurdan is next, and then it's Julia.
Thank you. So I just want to look at it from a different perspective. This ongoing change, working from home, uncertainty, what it is really creating in the management and in the employees, it creates fear. Unknown is always parallel with fear. So when there is fear, the decisions, the part of the brain we use as we make decisions is more the survival phase, where you just either fight or flight. So when it comes to that, I think clearing that fear is one of the biggest things on the teams and in the organizations I work. It is at the senior level, the fear. And it comes from a fear of making a decision in this uncertainty and making a wrong decision. Because if the decision is wrong, it is failure. It brings failure. And things are changing so continuously, maybe the decision we're going to make as a board or the executives will not be right for in the next couple of months. But to stop that, the idea of reinvention is the point. What is working? Take the best of the old, bring the best of the new. And instead of making decisions, getting into the mindset of experimenting. When you tell your people, let's experiment how this is going to work from working from home and in this type of a meeting setup, let's experiment and get your feedback. It's not a decision. It just lifts the weight off and people contribute to that, because experimentation is parallel to improvement. There's no failure in experimentation. But when it's a solid decision and if it doesn't work, who to blame? So I would just kind of bring that perspective.
Thank you very much for this perspective. And this is exactly why I'm a passionate futurist, because future thinking and training your anticipation skills is exactly hitting to that point to get more resilient instead of reactive. And fear is a reactive behavior pattern versus resilience, which is an anticipatory behavior pattern. And this is why we are all here today and train this muscle. So Rob, sorry, Julia, please keep your thought. I will take Rob through because there is, I think, some kind of poll going on. Rob?
That's right. Just a quick one. We got to drop in. We have a lot of great people here. There's 60 people here, and a live poll is useful for us. We could have put this information from the chat into our report. So I'm going to pop the link in. It's just a simple question, and we have 8 respondents already. We would like to get 50 respondents. Let's go, kids. Let's get the polls done. Back to you, Eva.
Thank you very much. Let's get the poll. Now I'm already super, let's do this. Julia, please.
now I'm all distracted looking for the poll. Norden, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but you and I are cut from the same cloth. I would love to talk with you offside. But this, there is a big, deep component of understanding human nature and what we need to do in order to allow human nature to embrace this change. So I'm definitely, and Eva, maybe we all can get together. But I think that the question I wanted to pose to everybody is, I hear people kind of pulling for one side or another. And I feel like this is our default. This is the human default to want to say yes or no, black or white. And that what we really need to do is get used to this idea of emerging, of just kind of like, how do we allow people to have the space to be themselves and to kind of get the this environment that they need, and yet also realize that we're a part of a community and an organization that needs to work together, and understanding that connection cannot happen in isolation, and we have to create those spaces for connection to happen. I think there's certain elements where individual contributors and people who create on their own definitely need that headspace. I mean, I love working from home. I would, and I don't even want to like consider going back to like a real job, because I love that innovation and that space for innovating and creating. But I also desperately need that connection with people, and I definitely see that in organizations. So I feel like rather than this being a conversation about pulling one way or the other, I'd invite everybody to have more of a conversation of how do we create a new norm that allows people to differentiate and kind of find something that works for both all levels of the organization and all functions of the organization.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a big fan of both and as well, instead of either or. And with this, we are closing the perspective of the employees, and we are going to move on the economic and financial implications. I love the discussion so far. I love the energy in the room. Please raise your hand, say your words. We are eager to hear your perspective. Scott,
Absolutely.
you are on.
Yeah, and to Julia's point, that was a great point, Julia. You know, we're going to invite all of you to, all of you have the opportunity to help us with our post-production on this. So we're going to gather all of these thoughts and collate them, compile them, you know, deep dive them, right, and see if we can find trends. So I'm once again just want to invite any of you that are interested. We'll put a link up to where you can sign up, and that'll be probably mid to late next month. I don't have the exact date, but I'm sure somebody can put that in the chat as well. All right, now we're going to move on to economic and financial implications. So companies, you know, the question is, are companies requiring employees to return to the office to utilize their commercial assets in a financially beneficial way? And it's been written about quite a bit. You know, you get both sides, obviously, depending on what your reading is. But that's always been a question in the back of my mind is, okay, so they're pounding the table. They want everybody back in the office, but is there an actual financial reason that the companies want everybody back in? Or is it just you have a CEO that likes to work from home or work in the office? And I'll stop there and we'll open it back up for more comments and discussions. And just as a point of reference in the wrap, that was one thing that was pointed out, was the fact that some companies are really being financially hurt by the fact that they're not utilizing their spaces. And that also boils down into the greater economy, right? Those that actually rent the office spaces out versus owning them themselves, the companies. So any other thoughts or thoughts on and financial implications? And they can be for the employee as well. In the wrap, I'll mention that it was for a person to commute a month, $561, which is, well, they said it's groceries, but I think it's probably not quite there anymore because of inflation. But there's impacts on both sides of this question.
Yeah, actually, we talked to Stephanie.
Sorry, Ava, I'll jump in here just to keep the conversation going. I think this idea of shifting the location, I work with some local communities, and they used to be bedroom communities, and now they're work from home communities, and the needs change around them within the community, right? The idea of needing more places to get lunch, or places to make copies, or to do mailings, or to meet with clients, or to grab a coffee in the middle of the day. All of those kinds of things shift in these smaller communities that used to be bedroom communities, and now they're needing those additional resources. And on the flip side of that, being in the city and close to Chicago, we're seeing a lot of smaller shops that were downtown feeding off of that office traffic closing down, and so the downtown area is becoming slightly less vibrant. Now we're seeing a shift back to more of that of late, but I think it's an interesting dynamic of this shift of where do the smaller businesses go as a result of where the workforce goes.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's a really good point. One intermediate thing, we have 30 answers on the poll, so everybody who did not answer the poll yet, please do so. Kevin Porter.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, everyone's been giving such great points. I think, I do wonder on the economic side, are today's decisions based on past decisions, or are they based on future decisions, right? So are they making return to office decisions based on past investments in real estate, not necessarily what they need to do on a go forward basis? So I think that organizations are definitely seeing the trend. I do think as leaders, though, I think there's Julia, I think, brought up a great point about the either or. And I think that, we have to recognize that every person is so different. We've talked about introverts, extroverts. We've talked about people that enjoy being in workspaces, people that enjoy work from home. I think, we really need to kind of get down to like being a bit more empathetic with the people that work for us or work in these companies to say, what really benefits them the most. And I think that's where organizations can really, kind of start to differentiate themselves in this kind of hybrid, uncertain future work model. So that just, the economic pieces are huge, and, the employees that do have to go into the office or do have to have, in-person employment. I think we brought it up in the chat, typically some of those jobs can be, lower paying. And so what are the economic impacts to the employees for having to go into work? And will that necessarily drive change into different, places of employment that, give them this, the ability to work that fits best with their model of, what benefits them financially as well as personally. So.
Great point. Stephen Aguilar Milan. I'm not sure if I said that correctly. I tried my best here.
Close enough. My observation is that the trend towards working from home is maybe at most 4 years old. My view is that it's probably a little bit too early to draw any conclusions. We can see the obvious benefits to members of staff for working from home. The benefits to employers are a little bit more mixed, a little bit more nuanced. What we do know is that labour markets in the developed world are very, very tight at the moment. And it could be that working from home is something that employers accept in order to get the staff. It would be very interesting to see when the balance of power within the labour market changes and goes and swings back towards the employer again, whether or not working from home would still be on the table. So I think that if anybody asked my opinion on the matter, I'd say, well, it's too early to tell. Let's wait until we've had a real stinker of a recession with, like mass unemployment, to see whether or not working from home continues as a feature, or whether at that point employers will insist that staff go back to the office. So my conclusion is it's too early to tell.
Again, agree to disagree. So I don't see that the trend of working from home is only 4 years old, because I personally work from home since more than that, even before the pandemic. When I was in a bigger organization, I was working from home, so did a lot of my friends. So I think it was just the pandemic, and the last 4 years was an acceleration of a longer going on trend. But yes, I agree. Let's see where it takes us. It's Howard and then Maury.
Thank you, Eva. Gang, some of you know that I was the CIO and architect of IBM's Work From Anywhere plan starting back around 1992. I tried to be very quiet through this session because I've learned a lot of lessons over the last 30 years about this, that everybody needs to learn. Everybody needs to kind of go through it. I come down squarely on the understand what the true costs are for the people, for the management, for the company, because that's how companies make decisions. That's how board of directors make decisions. Yes, there's a lot we could talk about mental health and other things that are important, but that's not what the companies base their decisions on. We are still 30 years into this in the messy middle of trying to understand where we're going in this whole process of work. Somebody in the chat mentioned, does AI play a role into this? Somebody else mentioned, does the gig economy play a role in this? There are many, many things that will have an impact on what work ultimately becomes. Just a couple I wrote down that we haven't even touched on. People talked about mentoring. How do we learn today versus how we learned 30 years ago? How do we mentor today as opposed to how we did it 30 years ago? I don't know. Most of the young people I work with, they don't even want to go to college. They want to go to Coursera. They want to get online. They want to learn something that they can go get employed with. So learning and mentoring is one. How will cities respond, right? All this unused real estate or all this reduction in people coming into the city every day is having tremendous impact on tax revenues. That's going to be another overlapping aspect of this Venn diagram. And don't even get me started on the migrant crisis and what that's doing into people's willingness to be in central cities at this point where crime is up. Again, like I said, everybody kind of needs to look at the angle of this that they see today and learn from it. My feeling is companies will always make the financial decision. They care about return on assets. People are assets. Space is an asset. And they're looking constantly as to how they get the most for the least investment. And that will drive where this ends up, in my opinion, from an economic standpoint. Enough said. Thanks.
Thank you, Howard. Eva, we probably have time for one or two more.
Okay. I just wanted to add here what I raised before already. So whenever you are in a room, you should ask who is not here and why. So we should also not forget that remote work is about what I researched regarding 50% of the jobs out there. And depending on which country you reside in, the more developed the country is, the more the percentage goes up. But the lower developed the country is, the less share is even possible to do remote. So just to keep that in mind, to keep the bigger picture. So then it's Stephen, the last one for this round, and the rest, please put it in your chat or keep it for the breakout sessions. We want to hear you, we just don't have the time.
Ava, are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you.
Okay, great.
Maybe I'm taxi driver.
Yeah, no, just an observation from, say, the global south and from Kenya, where I'm based. The economic and financial implications of work from home, so many of these office buildings, it could easily be for every person you have as a staff, there might be 3 or 4 related staff that are cleaning, that are guards, that are reception. You go through multiple lines of reception, you go through 4 security guards. There's like a whole side sort of business that these, you know, any office building has to support because wages are so low. So if people are not be in these offices, there's like a whole range of low income sort of people that, you know, you can't be a security guard from home. You can't be an office cleaner from home. You can't. So there's a whole other ripple effect that, you know, for a lot of people that will not be returning, those jobs will be lost. So just an observation from that end.
Yes, thank you for that. Exactly hitting into my point. And this was, I think, a perspective we did not have so far. So thank you for that. Scott, should we call one more, or how do you want to proceed now? Where did Scott go? Okay, it seems Scott is not here at the moment. So I asked Maury to share his perspective because you had your hand up before. You have your hand up again. Please share your perspective, and then we are going to move on to the next point in the agenda.
Thank you. I'm hearing a couple of key points that are revealing to me how much we depend on some old assumptions. I was really interested in what Kevin had to say. He was talking about, and I'm going to paraphrase, that we needed to be empathetic to different people with different needs, which I think is absolutely true, but it's new. Because one of the things that used to be the case is we could assume that one size fits all. We could assume that because everybody came to work 5 days a week, managers didn't have to think about, well, yes, but Sarah is not able to come to work because she's got children at home at a certain age and stage. That was not something managers had to think about at all. We assumed one size would work for all. And now we're in a world in which if you're going to take hybrid and various forms of work seriously, you actually have to understand each and every employee. Now, the second assumption is on this economic issue. It may be thoroughly justified what the company says to its employees. We need you to come in. It's important for the business, etc. But what they're drawing down is the trust bank that they may assume they have with their employees. And yet a lot of their employees are saying things like, well, there's some big client who is really unhappy that we're not using their office building. There is some kind of less than important relationship that I'm being asked to sacrifice for. And if the management hasn't built and continue to build trust with its people and not assume that level of trust, then those requests to get on board with the team and do what's good for the company will fall on deaf ears. And so it has to, because I think a huge amount that went on was that in COVID was that companies had to learn to trust because they didn't have a choice. But were they doing it wholeheartedly, or were they doing it because that was the only way forward for them at the time? And now are they revealing that it's not very much interest on their part to understand their individual employees and how this impacts them differently?
Yes, thank you so much. And I just wanted to emphasize on the word trust, because I think an interesting thing on the trust issue, I agree with your view that when COVID hit, that companies had to trust their employees. But now the question is more when they onboard new folks, which may work from day one remotely, how to build the trust and how you can create online spaces that foster that kind of connection and that kind of trust. So I think these are now very beautiful words to close our deep dive. How do you agree, Scott?
I agree.
Let's
And I just wanna
close
thank-
on trust.
Yes, absolutely. I want to thank everybody for your input. Like we said, there are no wrong answers today, and this is, we brought a collective of close to 60 people together. We all have our own opinions. We all have our own you know um, sight glasses that we see through, but together as a collective, we our the benefit will be to maybe help guide, and or see maybe what's coming in the future, peel some things out. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Sean and Rob. They have some fun facts for us, and a little bit of guild event preview. So Rob, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Trustfully, we hand over to you, Rob and Sean. Sorry, I needed to make that. I needed to make that connection now.
We're here. We're the Grey Swan Guild. We are sense making. We're working together in different ways of gathering thoughts and ideas, and we're shifting gears a lot. There's a lot of mental power in this room, right, Sean?
That's right, Rob.
U.S. We're Africa. We're in Canada. We're in Eva. What city are you in Austria?
I'm in a small village called Weiz, which is nearby Graz, which is 2 hours from Vienna, and I guess Vienna is known. Hopefully.
And what are we having for dessert tonight?
Here at my place, you mean?
Yes.
Since I'm going sugar-free at the moment, it will be nuts. It's not so spectacular. Sorry for that.
Well, on that note, that's a good piece of trivia because you're one of my favorite nuts. So we are doing Grey Swan Guild. We're going to shift gears a little, lighten it up a little bit after all that heavy thinking. A little bit of Grey Swan Guild trivia. It's pretty simple, folks. We're not going to push your minds too much, but we're going to have some questions. So we've got 3 or 4 things set up. Eva, can you mark my time with like touch your head or something? I'll watch you if I go too long. But we're going to start with, okay, here's some movies, Sean. Which one's which? You don't know. Which one is in a leap year? What year were these movies? Shout it out if you can know right away. Or which one? Like Godfather. What year was it, Howard?
Godfather, 1977.
Got to be a leap year, Howard.
Leap
It's
year,
gotta
buddy.
be, gotta be a leap year. Well, that would make it 76.
No, Steven's got it right in the chat though. 1972.
TikTok, Steven. Well done. 72. So who directed Godfather?
Francis Ford Coppola.
There we go.
Good answer.
Switching over to the second one, My Fair Lady, who wrote the play. Whoa. Wait, Sean, we're gonna do a couple more.
My Fair Lady.
Can you?
George Bernard Shaw.
Thank you, Antonia. Genius on the play stage. And who played Eliza?
What? Well, on the stage? Julie Andrews played Eliza on the stage. Audrey Hepburn in the film.
Oh, wow.
Bring it. Just bring me the movie trivia.
So what year was around the World in 80 Days winning its Oscar?
Christ.
Wow.
What's your?
I would say 68.
68. Wind it back. Anyone in the chat? 19. Oh.
He said 68.
64.
No, that was the year I was born, Howard, and I've yet to win an Oscar. 1956.
We'll see what we can do, Rob. This is quite a performance.
1956. Who wrote the book that was based on the movie?
Dr. Dolittle was PJ Travers?
The book Around the World in 80 Days.
Who wrote it?
Oh my goodness. Jules
Verne.
Jules Verne.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you. Oh, switch over to the Gladiator. Who is he generated, by the way, culturally sensitively? What was his background, the Gladiator? Was he a Roman? He was Greek. What year was the Gladiator? What year did it win the Oscar? 2000. Too early. It just happened. This is like recent
Rob,
history.
where are the music questions?
Carla put 2006.
Anyone, give me any of the music from the soundtracks. Who wrote the soundtracks for any of these movies? Or
Roger
any
Hammerstein.
Gladiator Hans Zimmer. Gladiators Hans
Yeah,
Zimmer, no?
exactly.
True, true. That's good. All right. Okay, that's Oscars. We're going to switch to the news right now. We got a couple of news questions for you. This is a big different shift. Okay, what year is the Toronto Star celebrating? Oh, no, I didn't cover it off. That's an easy one.
Looks like 1924.
Thanks, Howard. Sorry about that. My mistake there. I was like in there.
Not answered in a question setup though, Howard. We're gonna have to. What is 1924?
John, have we got another question on 1924 to stump Howard since I gave that away?
Well, there was a major international event that just got its start in 1924. Does anybody know what it was?
World's Fair.
You're pecking in the right place. It was global in nature.
Wasn't the World's Fair though.
The Olympics.
Winter Olympics.
There you go. Winter Olympics. Chamonix, France.
Good call.
I think the USA won the hockey that year.
You're gonna claim it. What famous
there's always a troll in every one of our meetings. I guess we found it today, Rob.
I believe Canada won that one. What famous book was published in 1924? It had great fame recently also because it was the first book that was consumed in the context window of Claude.ai. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Recently reprised by Basil Luhrmann. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. The main character pulled off by Leonardo DiCaprio. Published in
Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other 1924 questions, Sean? Captain Sean?
I think we've exhausted that one.
I like 1924. You know why? Because it was 100 years ago. Okay, a little bit of financial stuff. This is just a chart that compares 2008 and the crisis in the economy. But flip to the next slide. This is interesting. This is for Doyle. So, recent history. What was the price of Bitcoin in 2016, 2020, 2024? Sorry, that's a typo.
2016, it was hovering around $300.
600, I think. I think it was like 600.
Closer.
80,000 and then like 64,000.
Low. 64.
Yeah, 20 I'd say is around 64, which is about where it is today. 60K again.
It's $64,000 this morning. Oh, can you go ahead, please? Next slide.
2 minutes, Rob.
Yep.
Next slide.
And Sean.
What? Oh, no, back up one. I just want to give the real numbers. It's $430 in 2016. It was $8,000 in 2020. In 2024, it's $62,000. That's a 141% increase. But the better word is like, what is in 12 months? What's the increase in NVIDIA stock? Percentage-wise. Howard, what is that?
300 something percent. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
450%.
Yeah.
Now, around the room, I want in the chat, I won't put in the poll, what's your prediction for Bitcoin in 2028? In the chat, as many of you as possible, put your prediction here. I'm going to record this. It's going to go into the report. Don't buy any Bitcoin. It is a Ponzi scam still, even if you put it in your ETF. Next slide.
Hey, Rob, my answer includes the halving.
No one said it wouldn't be volatile. Back to the prediction. Back up one. So speaking of prediction markets, next year, this year, we're going to have prediction markets in the guild. Someone's controlling the slides. We've got two choices. So we're going to post in our report prediction markets. There's two very good ones called Metaculous and Manifold. And we're going to have that poll running on all year. Thanks for going forward. Thanks for playing trivia with us. Sean, we're going to talk a little bit about the guild. Over to you, chef de mission.
Yeah, this functions a little bit like an intermission or a halftime between the two different big sessions in our program. So I just will be short in terms of some of the other things that are going on in the guild. I know I'm gonna have to credit our host today, Eva, for this tagline of ours: "Don't be an ostrich, be a swan." There's an element of being aware and being noble. I think most of us on the inside of the guild know more about swans than we ever cared to know 4 years ago. But certainly this may be a t-shirt, but I think it does speak to the fact that we've got a really interesting group of over 10,000 people that have come together over the last 4 years to try to make sense of the world. Teeing up our next big event, we're going to have 5 big events this year. Day of the Swan is happening April 25th. It's being curated by my co-founder, Rob Tyree, with a group of 11 others. I know he's looking for people to try to actually help. We call a team in the guild a wedge. So please, if you have any interest, please get in touch with Rob. We'll move on to the next one.
Or with me for that matter.
Or with Eva. We've just gone through an exercise with a number of the front row members of our guild where we talked about our events and learning and intelligence and community and content and ventures. I know I've been had dinner with somebody this week that said, "Look, I'm coming to your first guild event today. What's it all about?" And the interesting thing is there's many different ways to participate in the guild. We're going to tell you in a minute just how to participate, but we have about 90 events going on this year. We're going to launch 3 different learning platforms and have 4 very specific education days. We have 10 research reports that are being produced by our guild this year. We have 4 different levels of community. We have another book that's going to be coming out from the guild, as well as a few other content offshoots. And we have 13 different ventures or experiments that have hatched in the guild. All of them might be interesting. If there's any interest at all in learning about those, please go to the URL or the QR code that's there. As mentioned throughout, and I will provide the link right now in the chat. If you have any interest at all in building the report that will come out 3 weeks from now from this discussion, please join us at the link provided in the attached. It's also on the screen here. We think there's an interesting time capsule that we'll be able to not only produce and provide value right now, but we're going to bring the whole band back together in 4 years. It's the furthest out event I've ever planned, but the link for 2028 has already been established. So please, wherever you are, February 29th, you've signed up for 2 events today, this one and the one 4 years from now. Next slide. We also have something coming up. I'll phrase this as a trivia question. When was the pandemic officially declared? There was an actual date I'm looking for here. For those that are really... Ooh! Heather, working in a role that probably had a lot to do with this, has nailed it already. March 11th, 2020. So where were you 4 years ago? And so... we're going to ask 50 writers within the guild, all globally distributed, to talk about, not only where were they, a little bit of a retrospective, what they actually think has changed, what has changed within themselves, and where do they think the lasting legacy of the pandemic will be when they write about this 10, 20 years later. So Heather, bravo on the line. My hope is that also volunteers you for being one of our 50 writers that will produce this report in 11, 12 days from now. We have just initiated our book club. Unfortunately, Ralph Mercer, who had to duck out for something today, is the curator of our book club. We are going to read 10 books in the guild today. We think it's one of the strongest ways to build community and kind of evoke some of the smarts inside of our guild. We're reviewing this one on March 6th. So please join us. We've already got something like 30 people joining us for a discussion of the book, The Coming Wave, which is a really good and insightful read around AI and technology and how it links with society with some really strong historical perspective. So please join us for that one. We'll be announcing our follow-up book for April after that.
Could you put the link in chat, Sean, for that one?
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Oh, great. I can walk and chew gum, but Rob is better when he does it for me. So, and we'll be doing movie trivia there too. That's just for you, Antonia. We are producing 2 books. We've done one in 2023. It's called Uncertainty. We brought 30 writers together. We are producing one, and I think Gordon, the executive director of Cygnus Publishing, is here. We're going to produce a book for September 12th called Compass, and he's going to have a canvas for writers at some point in March, and so look forward to that coming out from the Guild. And then finally, just if you want to have any kind of ground floor participation in any of this, there's almost 3 different options, and potentially all 3. One, fill out a form. At least you can tell us what you can certainly telegraph our interest at the link down below. It takes you about 5 minutes to go through it and certainly gets you onto our radar. Secondly, we are hosting our first regatta of the year. This is where new members come in. They get to ask any question they want about all the workings of our guild. They get to find out each other. We do some exercises, and it's one of my funnest hours of the month. So certainly join us next Wednesday. And then finally, if you want to schedule a meeting with either myself or Rob, just go to the link down below. And we love having one-on-one discussions every week. A majority of my Fridays are spent talking to new and prospective guild members. So I love having these conversations. Please let me know. And once again, I will, if not Rob, will produce all those links into the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bring this back over.
I'm going to be sharing this whole deck with you. All the links on this deck are live. So we're good.
Perfect. All
back
right.
Over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Rob and Sean. Most excellent, and a lot of good laughs. We went from serious to calming our minds a little bit. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Actually, we'll reconvene about, I think, looks like 11:40 at this point. And then we'll do an introduction to Futures Wheel, and break out into our rooms and see what we can come up with. So we'll see everybody back at 11:40 or 11:40. Well, 40 after the hour for whatever hour you're currently on in the world. Let's put it that way.
So we don't have anything prepared for this 5 minutes. I'm going to put on a little bit of music, and go get your refreshments, go get some coffee, go take a mental health break, take a walk around the house if you're at home. Apparently from our poll, a lot of people are at home, Sean.
And believing they're going to stay there. But yeah, please come back. I think there's a lot of, I feel the energy in the room, and I think you'll get a real forum to actually get into smaller groups and have a real intense discussion with some of the people that are probably either like-minded or have a real energy for the discussion.
And no need to sign out. Just remain on the Zoom.
Howard.
How are you, Augustine? How you been?
I shaved. That's it.
Yeah, I almost didn't recognize you.
Yeah, Sylvia told me the same. So I had to get used to this new face.
Well, it looks good. So congratulations.
Thanks.
What have you been up to?
Here, Uruguay, same old. But trying to go deeper into some feedback from that I was with the summit of parliaments like the future committees from different countries, and I gathered some feedback, and I just want to validate some ideas around what every country or government is up to towards AI. So probably I will pitch you on that later to see some other insights.
I would be very happy to chat about that. I have been doing well, see, I don't come at it like Rob does, because he is, when I need an expert opinion, that's where I turn, right, as to what's going on. But in terms of applying it to specific kinds of roles, that's where I'm spending some time now. And it, you know, my you'll appreciate this. My favorite comment is when somebody says to me, in 5 years, AI will be doing 100% of X, whatever X is. And my response is typically, yes, that may be true, but in 7 years, a lot of it will have moved back to humans when we admit that there are things that AI really can't do the right way. So it's always an interesting discussion to have.
Everything is accelerating in an exponential way that we have been talking for so many years, but now we are seeing it live. And I was just catching up on some Carswell moments about the singularities near rare. So he's probably right on track about like 2029. That, I mean, with the Neuralink going on, it's like an awesome ride to be alive in this moment in time. But sometimes we don't grasp actually what is gonna take, right? There are so many coordinates around it that I don't know if we can grasp our minds around it quite a bit yet, because the scenarios are changing drastically and rapidly. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, well, so my take on it is, if you restrict what you're asking it to do, if you put parameters around it, you can get it to work consistently. It's the unconstrained scenarios where the outliers are, where all of a sudden you find the places where it doesn't work. And even some of our prior discussion on this call, you know, about work from anywhere, the impact of the size of the company, the impact of whether somebody's living rural or in a city. There are things that make it easier or harder for any of the new technologies, any of the new approaches to work reliably. And that's the word I rely on. You can get anything to do anything once in a while. But to get it so you can absolutely rely on it, a lot of this technology needs 20 years of trial and error before we figure that out.
So I stepped away and just stepped back. Are we talking about my teenage kid? You can get anything to do anything once in a while, but if you put parameters around it, it works better.
Thanks, Ron. That's perfect. Yeah, you and I
actually, that is a great analogy.
But I appreciate the thought process.
You know, technology really goes a long way in helping achieve the desired outcomes.
Yes, it does. It's
I was listening for a good 5 minutes and honestly thought, oh, they're talking about teenage kids in the downtime.
but it's what's your time horizon is always the question.
I was
you've been around. Based on I'm sure you're not using a hair coloring that produces that color for you. So you've
Well,
been
that's all
around
experience.
for a while, right? And you know what we all know at this point, that yes, there's brilliant new things happening every day that solve fantastic problems, but it does take a while for them to gestate and really become something you can rely on.
And this is the interesting thing about the book club, right? It's folks like us who are reading The Coming Wave. I am actively in the process of highly recommending it to my friends who have teenage children who are choosing colleges and or universities and or courses of study, because I think it's them who need to be reading this book and having that shape their direction, their path, their journey. What the heck am I, what should I be studying right now to have a job 5, 6, 8, 10 years from now?
Yes.
Right? It's all going to be different. Who knows? What are the common threads? And The Coming Wave helps.
Plastics, right? 1960, I think 1966, Rob, if we're doing trivia. Graduate, right?
Yep.
What should I be doing? Plastics.
AI. The word's AI, Howard. AI and GAI. That's what I would replace that word in that movie right now. And we'll go at this toe to toe one day, Howard. The world needs to see our viewpoints because they are amazingly similar and amazingly different.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and with that, you never know. The subject of the 2028 Leap Day of the Swan could very well be AI. So stay tuned. All right, we're back. So hopefully everybody got a nice break, a little coffee, and now we're gonna work in towards our breakout rooms. Eva is going to be so kind as to take us through Futures Wheel and give us basically a quick overview. She's got a couple slides for it, and then we're gonna get our breakout rooms going and have some more fun. Thanks everybody for coming back.
So hello again after the break. I called it Let's Futures Wheel It, and as you recognize, maybe Scott corrected himself several times saying futures instead of future. So everybody who immersed already in futures thinking knows why. So when we look into the future, we never look at one future, but we always look into the space of possibilities. And preparing our Leap Day event, we found that the Futures Wheel is an intuitive tool to do exactly that. So what is coming up now, we are going shortly into the breakout sessions. This is just an immersive first image so that you know what you will be looking at when you enter the breakout room. But for all of you who never worked with the Futures Wheel so far, it is really a simple and intuitive tool. I'm going to use the example the Institute for the Future from Palo Alto is using when they explain the Futures Wheel. So you start at the center and you start with the change you're going to look at. So in our case, it's the 4 sections of the work from home. But the Institute for the Future is using, imagine tomorrow everybody has the superpower to fly. So what would be a consequence if everybody is flying? So you look, then you think what could be a direct consequence. So if everybody could fly, then there would be a lot of air traffic, wouldn't there? So, and then you are taking it from the first consequence, but when everybody is in the air, then probably there would be some people needed to direct that traffic in the air. There would need to be rules established to have the traffic in the air in some kind of directive way. So this would be then a second order consequence. So this exercise we are going to do now for the topic of work from home, you will be assigned to one of the categories we discussed before. So it is the work culture, the CEO's perspective, the employee's perspective, and the financial and economic outputs. We start at the center. You will have in your the respective room you're at, you are going to have a little resources box where you have bubbles. You can assign to the first circle, so the first order consequences, and then the circles to use it for the second order consequences. There will be facilitators in every room in case you have any doubts. We color coded them according to the steepled category because if possible, please think about in what kind of category your consequence could fit. It helps us to keep a holistic view on things, so not to have only technological consequences or only environmental consequences. It is not 100% needed. There are white circles, there are the so-called joker circles. So if you are not sure what category, or if you don't want to keep the time to think about it, then just choose the white one to go. And I hope that is making a clear base for everyone. As said, there are going to be facilitators. I'm in the green room, that's why my background. So in case you have any doubts, ask your questions in the smaller groups. There will be also chats in the breakout rooms. And I think we're good to go. Or has anyone a question to raise here in the big room directly? Then you can do so now.
So Sean, are you putting together the breakout room to pop people into?
Nearly lost my beer there by not saying stuff. We've got 4 breakout rooms. They are numbered. I'll be opening them up in a second as long as there's no questions. They are hybrid work culture, number 1, CEO perspectives, number 2, employee perspectives, number 3, and economic financial impacts, number 4. So for those that are leading, but yeah, back to you, Eva.
The collaboration link for the Miro board would be needed also.
It is in the chat right now.
It's already in the chat. Okay, so everybody can move.
People are already in the rooms. I'm seeing them come in.
Okay, so I
The
will
bigger screen you have, the
now.
better you will feel.
And I can certainly help wayfind people into their rooms. I'll probably hang out here in the lobby as everybody tries to find their way. So please.
No, I'm actually in the pink room, not the yellow room. There's a little bit of uncertainty in the waves there. Stephanie, you're in the yellow room, right?
So once again, if you want to join, Stephanie's in hybrid work culture, room number 1. Gita, or sorry, CEO perspectives is number 2. Employee perspectives is number 3, and economic and financial impact is number 4. That is your room, Rob.
Yep.
So please join.
Sylvia, you're with me down in the pink room in the corner. The bigger screen you have, the easier this is for you. If you've got a mobile phone, really difficult other than to follow along. There will be squinting, Howard. I don't take that personally because I squint as well.
Okay. So Rob, make it into your room because they'll be looking for a direction.
I'm right in my room now.
If you are, you shouldn't be able to speak to us right now.
Oh.
We don't have the breakout rooms on the screen yet, guys. We need either links to the different breakout rooms in chat, or we need the offer to join a break-in room enabled within Zoom.
It's in process, Sean. I only see one. I don't see a room yet. So you can be in the Miro, but there's no, you're not in a separate room yet.
Interesting. There's a number of you that have joined and some of you have not. So,
yeah, I'm not sure.
Howard, I'll just do this very rudimentary. We'll go through it quickly. Howard, what room?
Wait, Sean, can we not get Zoom to do breakouts?
I wish I could right now. Apparently the rooms are showing and some people have joined, but they not for everybody.
Yeah, if you scroll down to the bottom, if you let's see, where's that at? Breakout rooms.
Yeah, down.
If you go to more breakout rooms, everybody's on the list, and then scroll down to the bottom and you can join whichever room you're interested in.
You say that again, Scott, please?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
I don't see the
I
option.
can't see anything
That's
here
a
in the
facility.
chat.
No.
Perhaps if
it's not in
somebody
chat.
just says room 1, and then everyone who wants to go to room 1 can raise their hands and be matched accordingly.
Yeah, we can do that.
Folks, can you see breakout rooms in the, if you go to the 3 dots, do you see breakout rooms there?
All right, friends, this is Heather. Hi, everybody.
There might have been a Zoom update. I'm so sorry, Sean and Rob. I'm just going to say there might have been a Zoom update. So some of us have updated, some of us have not. So previously, I think that recommendation that Carissa had was fantastic. So going one by one is fantastic for those of us who can't self-select. And then I would say as well that maybe we put it in the chat to help everyone who is a host. And Sean and Rob, if you want to make me a co-host, I'll help sort people over.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Heather. Awesome.
Thank you, Heather.
Could we learn the facilitator for each room, please?
Sylvia and I are in the pink room for financial and economic.
Olivia and I are in the culture room, room 1.
Ava and I are in green room.
Okay.
CEO.
Wonderful that everyone's saying what room you are, but what I need is a list so that I can move people. Sorry.
No, we
Help
were
me out
just
here.
saying we were just saying who's facilitating in which room. Someone asked that question.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
If you could put your desired room number, we'll start plucking you off, both myself and Heather. Appreciate it. Mirko, I see you're going into 1. I'm just Kevin. Thank you, everybody.
What are the topics again in the rooms? I'm sorry.
Hybrid work culture, number 1. CEO perspectives, number 2. Employee perspectives, number 3. Economic and financial impacts, number 4.
Yep, and I moved some of the my helper. Olivia, room 1's looking good. Even Howard are in the CEO perspective. Eva will move Antonia. Antonia, you good? Good to move?
I'm not able to select anything, but if you want to move me around, please do.
Which room are you in though? I think you're not 1 though. You're number.
No, I'm CEO.
Yeah, don't put stuff in the chat unless you want to be put there.
Sorry.
No worries.
All right. You're there, Antonia.
Thank you.
All right, we got her out.
I don't know what room I'm in, guys.
Number 4, Rob, number 4.
I haven't got a way of selecting it.
That's okay. We'll move you in.
Thank you.
You're there.
I am. Bye.
Get me out, Scotty.
We're getting to all of you.
Thanks, Sean.
Slowly but surely. Thanks, Heather.
All right.
Well, this is Leap Day after all.
Under control. I'm going to join my room.
This feels like a Deadpool almost. As I try to get everybody in the rooms. You can move it. Sorry, just there's a small enough group of people. Ron, what room?
4, please.
4?
Yep.
Okay. Oh. Amy? One. Thank you. Lee?
2.
Thank you. Fatima?
3, Sean.
Thank you so much. Basir? Or Goody? Alistair?
Heather, we can't hear you.
Wherever you need me.
You're muted.
I'm off. Sorry. Thank you. Jeff?
Looks like the 3 is the lowest if people
Wherever you want to put me.
That was Goody? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
And who was the facilitator for room 3?
Room 3 is Gita, I believe. Okay, so Kevin.
Jeff.
I'll take 3.
And Jeff.
Chris, where would you like to go?
CEO room, please.
CEO, got it. No problem. Thank you so much.
And Sylvia is the CEO, right? If I'm not mistaken. Sylvia Closer?
She is not. She's in number 4, economic financial impacts.
And Alistair, which room would you like to go to? There's 4. There's
Wherever you need me, whoever's got the least
okay.
people.
Well, you could be needed everywhere, Alistair. You never know. I'm going to put you in CEO perspectives. Good luck. Congratulations. Happy promotion.
Great, thanks.
Nice. Basir, where are you going? 4. I think I saw 4. Yeah.
The only person I haven't tried to get is Jeff. And Robert, I thought I put you in a room and you didn't get in. What happened there?
No, he had to come back.
No, I had put the wrong number down, so I changed it. I guess you didn't see to room 1, unless you need me in another room. It doesn't matter, I guess.
No. We're going to put you where you want to go. It's fine, Rob. Okay, Robert.
2 did you want? Or
room 1?
Room 1. There you go.
There we go. Thanks.
And then Jeff, who's not available.
He
Hey,
may
Sean,
be-
nice to see you.
Thanks for doing that. No, appreciate it. What do you think that was? Oh, you're muted.
It really is. Did you upgrade? So we
need then to create more more focused social interactions where they're more intentional, maybe at a particular point in time, and whether that would create better or worse opportunities for folks to be connected and to really build the relationships that they need in order to be successful. It might be tougher for introverts because now they are in a room with 100 people instead of being able to meet someone at the water cooler, right? But then again, it might be better in other ways because you would be bringing multiple people together in the same space. And so there's a little bit more of that ability to kind of find your tribe or find your people. We talked about overscheduling of meetings and using meetings as sort of a mechanism for creating connection touch points, and how that could be, it could be that people are spending more time in meetings than they were even in the office, which I know for some of us was a problem when we were even in the office. But that, and the idea that of having to schedule, maybe even to the point when we start to bring in the global perspective of having to schedule into times that we maybe weren't scheduling into before, because there was a 9 to 5 that was your corporate 9 to 5, and everyone who wasn't in that time zone had to figure it out. And now we all have to figure it out. And so there's this sort of bleeding of time potential that could happen there. Also, the more fear of missing out on meetings on one hand, and then fear of missing out on the kids' baseball game or football game or whatever on the other hand. And so that can take a mental toll, and then I'm constantly feeling like I'm never where I need to be. So we kind of went down that path for a bit. We talked about building relationships and having to be really intentional about building relationships, making sure that there are tools and techniques and best practices that are being proliferated, and that some folks are, and that puts a big burden on the senior leadership team or the leadership team within an organization. It almost creates another job for people to do, that they're also managing the relationships of their individual employees or the individuals in the organization beyond just the work product. Which maybe that will partially be a part of the cause of the backlash, which the CEO group, I'm sure, was talking about. And then I'll just go down one more thread here, and certainly, a lot more conversations. But the other thread that we were talking about, at first we talked about generational differences and expectations, and it didn't really go very far. But then as we started to think about it and talk about things, this idea that, older leaders might have a harder time supporting work from home because it's not what they're used to. Might be difficult to attract people who are interested in work from home. How do you find that balance? But also it may create more increased work for your middle managers, because your middle managers become the ones trying to balance between the needs of the organization and the needs of the individual. And so it does create that kind of a tension for them and more work, which may make it even more difficult to get folks to be interested in taking on leadership roles or middle manager roles. We also talked about shifting from time and effort, sort of being in the office. This came up in our larger discussion earlier, to outcomes, but kind of playing that thread out and saying, what might that mean? It might mean a bifurcation of work, where if your work is really more relational and or more creative, you may have to be in the office. Whereas if it's more transactional or individual, maybe you don't have to be in the office, which could create a different kind of a dichotomy. Disassociation of employees. If we're talking about work becoming more outcomes oriented, and I'm judged based on outcomes, do I need to be connected to a broader organization? Do I need to feel like I'm part of an entity? Or is it more like a guild or like the Hollywood model, where people come together to produce a project or an outcome, and then they sort of go their separate ways, and a different group gets put together to create another outcome? And then what does that mean for company culture? Is there such a thing as company culture anymore? Or is it more about project culture and how groups come together at a point in time to work together? And then what does that mean? Because if that becomes the exclusive model, now the tools that you need in order to work in that way are different, and you have to be more conversant on multiple tools so that you can pull together with a team based on the tools that team chooses to use. Or does that also cut you out of certain teams because you don't know the tools? So interesting kind of, pulling that out from a technology perspective, and what does that mean for the individual, and also for potentially the way that we work in the future.
Nice.
So there's a lot there, but hopefully that gives you a flavor of the kinds of conversations we were talking about.
It does.
Question,
Thanks,
Stephanie. On that last point about teams combining for projects, any discussion about doing it external to the company as well? In other words,
I think it was exactly that, Howard. I think it was 100% externally to the company, where maybe individuals aren't connected to the company anymore at all, and they come into to perform work for an entity, as opposed to it being whereas a company is maybe at the extreme end, right? Maybe a company is no longer a group of a massive group of employees. It's a core team that's directing the work. Or maybe even, when we talk about DAOs, this idea of a distributed kind of a model for organizations, where we're really coming together around the work and not the people.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for clarifying that.
I have one last comment. It's the point that Howard made to me earlier this week. There's no master's degree for a middle manager to handle a hybrid staff.
Yeah.
So those are the people that I feel worse for, in all honesty. I mean, and as far as that stuff goes. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much. We're now going to move on to Eva. Eva, you want to just some highlights of your room? And we've got a little bit of time, so just you can go ahead and speak until you can get everything across.
Until I don't. Okay. I'm inviting everybody who was in our breakout room to just join in case I'm not representing it in your manner. What was really interesting to me, so we had the CEO perspection, and after dragging Howard back from the 6th and 7th grade of possible consequences to more like the next 4 years. So this was our first task, to not go 20 years ahead, but to focus back on the time frame we chose. For me, it was interesting. I thought people who joined the breakout room for the CEO perspective, it would be much more factual, much more on the technological side, on the economic side of things. And actually it revolved a lot about leadership, communication, collaboration, and how these topics are going to be handled by the C-suite in the next 4 years, because this was the time frame we were looking at, no? Because actually, I mean, it's in deep connection with what Stephanie already said. So you have a distributed team, they are in different time zones, they are from different cultural backgrounds. So leaders need a different mindset than 10 years ago to handle this kind of diversity. We were talking about the emergence, or maybe not even the trend, or it's already here, of the need of executive coaches, because this kind of complexity we now have in teams and in leadership is something you cannot handle on your own anymore. You need from time to time someone to drag you out of your bubble and or to poke your bubble in order that you can see again the full picture, because there is so many wheels in turning position at the moment. What was an interesting perspective for me, because I personally had not thought about this hits as well into not only onboarding but also offboarding. I believe Aaron was the input for this one, because when you think about it, you have a distributed team, everybody has his hardware, so you are collaborating on IP, on innovations. How are you dealing with these issues? So there will be also legal implications out of this, in how technologically you are doing collaborations on that matter. So Antonia, please help me out here. What did I forget? Because I think just talk now without the board.
You covered quite a bit of it. Something we touched on at the very end of our discussion was emerging technology and how CEOs were going to be incorporating emerging technology into their culture. One of the challenges that we talked about very briefly is that emerging technology is evolving faster than regulatory challenges, right? Which means that CEOs are needing to establish ethical ways of working or ethical AI mandates, or doing or taking ownership of their environmental and social impacts of their companies ahead of frequently ahead of regulatory challenges. So CEOs have to be establishing it in the current state so that they can continue working, but also try not to establish something that they're going to have to dramatically undo 2 or 3 years later when regulatory stuff comes down the pike. The other thing is, and this is more specific, industry specific, but certain industries, certain CEOs, because of emerging tech, maybe end up playing more of a political role than they ever anticipated before. And the example we used in the room was Elon Musk providing the airspace for Ukrainian defense, and therefore suddenly becoming a player in international politics in an area that traditionally you wouldn't see CEOs playing, right? And that's more specific to high tech. So that's a different where. So I think those are the questions that CEOs can barely wrap their heads around at the moment, because they're just trying to function day to day and try to deal with hybrid work. But those questions are coming at them faster and faster than I think anybody anticipated. And I think it's just going to get more complex. I personally think this is going to get more complex.
Exactly.
4 years from now.
Just to add on that, so one point we were raising was also that within the next 4 years, CEO need to find a way to create the spaces to think about those more strategic, more long-term issues, because as Antonio pointed out, at the moment, with all the emergence going on all at the same time, they're so caught up in the firefighting that these spaces are very limited, but they need to be there. So this is also something we've seen in the questions for the CEO side.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Antonia, for backing me up here.
Thanks to both of you. And now we'll move on to Gita.
Hi. So our group was actually looking at the impact on the employee. I'm really going to just give a very broad overview, and if Scott and any of the others in the group would like to add on, please do. But I think we had a lot of quality discussion, and we were going into depth around certain sort of phenomena. Broadly, the sort of dominant themes that came up were equity issues, the haves and the have-nots, those who have the ability or the opportunity to work at home versus those who don't, and what that can mean in terms of maybe civil issues at a later stage, really looking ahead. Then there were sort of generational issues. I think Stephanie mentioned that in her group. And, the difference in thinking from the older workers, including myself, and younger workers. And sometimes, the thought that perhaps are we as the older generation imposing our framework of what work should be onto the younger generation, because younger workers, do we really ask them what is it that they want? So that sort of generational issue. Then there's the socialization matters, the ability and the opportunity to spend more time with family or friends versus socializing with colleagues. So, if you're in an office, you're more likely to have those opportunities to socialize with colleagues. Whereas if you're at home, you perhaps can give more quality time to your family, but also the other side of it. And some of these points were actually apparent, in our earlier discussions in this session, that boundaries can be an issue then, boundaries in terms of how the family perceives your availability versus, you needing to actually do your work. Then there's actually the emotional matters situation, and the sorts of things that can crop up are things around trust between the employer and the employee, resentment, family may feel that you're not really working because you're at home, perhaps, and also back to the equity issues of those who are able to work at home versus those who aren't. Would that create some sort of emotional discontentment between the groups? And social cohesion, does working from home facilitate or create a barrier towards social cohesion? And also the guilt relief matters around sort of like, oh, well, I'm at home, so I'm not commuting as much. So I'm actually, helping with the carbon footprint matter. So there's a relief there at one level, but the guilt, if you are commuting, perhaps I'm sort of unnecessarily contributing to the carbon footprint of matters. So those are sort of like the dominant themes. There were a lot more things, and literally I'd be talking for a lot longer if I start going into more detail, unless there's anything else that any of the others would like to add at this point.
I'm good, but I'll leave it. If anybody else that was in our room, if you have any more points you want to make, but I think Guido, you summarized it extremely well. So, all right. Now we'll move on to Rob, and we'll let him summarize the economic impacts. I'm curious about this one as well.
Oh, I'm not going to do that, Scott. You know that. I was breaking the rules. So we focused on finance and economics and across steeples, which is a little bit redundant, I'm finding. It was very interesting to see the tools in motion. We had high interactivity. I noticed we had the most bubbles of all the rooms, but in looking carefully, there's some repeats in there as we were working together. So very interesting mechanisms. So I'm going to talk about the mechanism, finish with that now, is that I find that it's super interesting to have a conversation going on and focused on one thing as we went to converge and diverge on different ideas in economics, as we started in the center of things and moved out to the edges. So Sylvia, what were some of the patterns that you are noticing in your room?
Yeah, I really like the work we've been doing in the room, and especially I was mentioning at the end of the work we've been doing with Futures Wave. So I've been working with Futures Wave for a while, and I find in such a limited time, we came up with really a lot of ideas. They were very diverse, and I was surprised just if you look visually, coming from economics and finance, we were able to cover all the spectrum of colors, which means we've been going in all the steeple dimensions. seeing how something that happens in finance and economics can ripple on other spheres was really interesting. Also, I was interested to see that we haven't been staying at the first or second order. We really went until 5 order, I think 5th order of consequences, which also for me is a good way to realize that we brought the room to think about really the future, like not just about reflecting on the past, but connecting what's been happening and our experience with remote work this past 4 years, and connecting with what were the trends that we thought were most important and what they could lead to in the future. So for me, that was really this leap day exercise that we wanted to do, like reflect on 4 years to project into 4 years. I hope that's also the feeling that the room had, but for me, that was really a good practice of the Futures Well, which is a tool we love, but which is not always easy to do with a lot of people and in breakout room. So really nice work. And Rob, you've been fantastic at hosting that session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How about you, Patrick? A good summary as we were coming out of the room. What are your thoughts on what we built together? Maybe some of the specifics too.
Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting. We started out thinking about us from in a very maybe one-dimensional approach, just thinking about the economic impacts, right? So our initial talks were about the transformations that we're seeing in commercial and residential real estate, and we talked through that and looked at a lot of the additional factors that come into play, and then I think the one thing for me that was really interesting was as I've been a digital nomad for quite a long time, probably 20 of my last 25 years of my career I've been working not in the office, at least often on the road, but the thing that was kind of most interesting to me was maybe self-evident that 20 years ago we couldn't have had this kind of meeting, not with the people that were on the Zoom call today, not with a very diverse sets of opinions and experiences, and I think that's something that we may be missing in terms of the real economic impact, which is probably going to take some time to evolve. In that we're going to see a lot of creativity, we're going to see a lot of innovation, we're going to see a lot of change. The pace of change, I think, is happening rapidly and is accelerating, and I think that's a good thing. We don't know for sure, and even though I've spent a lot of my time doing forecasting over my career, I've done enough of it to realize that the forecast is always wrong. So that's one of my mantras, and I think it's difficult to predict what the future is going to be, but it's still worthwhile to speculate what it might be. So and I think we came up with some good content regarding all of that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes. Scott, that's our time, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you want to put the slide back up, Eva? So where do we go from here? We as a guild.
Trying.
Yep, no problem. So we as a guild, we're going to take all of your great work and thoughts, and then we're going to put it in perspective. We're going to sift through it. We're going to sort it. We're going to, future think it, right? And publish our findings, giving everyone on this meeting credit, because everybody, this was a nice collective. It was a great group, and you all deserve the credit for sure. And from there, everybody, maybe hopefully we put this into your into the back of your mind, where you can watch the tea leaves over the next 4 years and even keep score if you like to do that, right? Say, oh, you know what, we talked about that, and I'll be darned, here it is, right? Here was the impact, or maybe it was a surprise, right? We never thought something was going to go south versus north. And lastly, we're going to reconvene on February 29th of 2028, review our assumptions, and we'll have a new topic to take us into 2032. So be ready for that.
That was a very interesting assumption to make that a Zoom registration.
Zoom from Microsoft.
I want to personally thank everybody who attended. This is I'm very humbled by the amount of people that showed up, and hopefully this was a good event for you. Feel free, please take this, everybody in talking to the C-suites, please take this back. Anything that you've gleaned here, this is what this is for. We want to share this. We want to make it, make things better. So, and then I also want to thank my co-host, Eva, and the Grey Swan Guild staff that helped me put this together. I just can't even tell you how instrumental they were in creating this event, and I appreciate it a lot. So, and I'm going to leave you with a puzzle today, and we will post the we'll post the actual answer later. So this is a time puzzle, and it does have to do with Leap Day. So I'll at least give you those hints. So a woman sits down to write a letter in France on November 8th, 1582. 3 days earlier, November 5th, 1582, the letter is received in England. What happened? See you guys in 4 years.
I look forward to interacting with all of your holographs then.
Now and after hours. So, anybody's welcome to hang out and stay for a little bit if you want. And, but yeah, thanks so much.